low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day.
Hey guys, this is Just One Guy, and I'm back here with another video. Now, this video is a bit complicated to explain, but essentially what I was doing was fixing Unity's NavMesh system. And their NavMesh system has some problems which are not exactly obvious when you first start using it. It seems like a simple system to use, but it's actually poorly explained and documented and leaves some important stuff out. So when you try to get deep into it, it doesn't work the way you expected it to. Now I'm going to go over the exact problems I was trying to fix and just show you them right now. The first problem is, if I move the player right here, I wanted the NPC to follow. Now when the NPC follows, I want it to stop a certain distance away from the player. Now just to show you the NavMesh settings, if I go right, you would think that would be controlled through the stopping distance. And for a certain part of it is. The stopping distance will tell the NPC to stop before they get beyond that distance. The problem is, the NavMesh agent has its own physics outside of the rigid body, which I was unaware of. So even if you remove this rigid body, the NavMesh agent will still act as if it was under physics. And the problem with that is, if you go and like this, and just run to make it more obvious, and have the NPC run at full speed and then try to come to a stop, it won't work that way. They'll crash into the player. Now it isn't crashing into the player now because I've solved the problem, but no matter what, even if you set the stopping distance, they will still crash into the player. And the reason is because they have velocity, and that velocity keeps acting upon the NavMesh agent, pushing them forward, even though you told the NavMesh agent to stop. And even if you remove the rigid body, which is supposed to control physics, the NavMesh agent system has its own physics, which continue to push the NPC forward using velocity. So that was the first problem I had. Now, what's supposed to stop this is also auto braking. So when the NPC is getting close enough to where it's supposed to stop, it's supposed to slow down to auto brake. That feature doesn't work at all. It will still crash into the player. It will just the physics will override the auto braking even if you have it on. Now, because I didn't know this was the problem, and that physics was acting upon the NavMesh agent, even though I turned the rigid body component off, how I figured out how to solve this was I actually just turned the NavMesh component off completely when they got be below the stopping distance, which actually worked because it stopped the physics from acting upon the NavMesh agent. Now later on I would figure out it's an even easier way to do that. All you have to do is set the velocity to 0. The problem I have with this is that you would never know the system existed, because you would expect the physics to work with the rigid body and not the NavMesh agent system. So that was the first problem that took me a while to figure it out, but eventually I got it right. And I actually think it should work the other way around, because in most games you wouldn't want realistic physics. In fact, I can't think of any game where you would actually want realistic physics. If you were doing something like a third-person action RPG or a first-person shooter, you would want the NPC to stop at a certain distance when they come close enough to you, no matter what. The only way I could think that you would want realistic physics is something like maybe a car game or something like that. That's the only scenario in which I could think that you would want realistic physics with moving an NPC. And 99% of the cases, you would want unrealistic physics because you would want the NPC to move exactly. Anyway, that was the first problem I had with the NPC. The second problem is a little more complicated to explain. I have this area right here, and the NavMesh agent, it can't actually reach this area. I know it has these arrows right here, but these arrows indicate that the NPC can jump down from this area, but I've intentionally set it up so there's no way that the NPC can jump up to this area. And what I was trying to do was, if you ever played Dragon's Dogma, the NPCs in that game, if they can't reach an area, what they'll do is they'll get as close as possible to the area, and then they would jump onto the area. And that's the behavior that I was trying to emulate. I wanted the NPC to do that. That way, even if the NPC couldn't reach an area, it would still be able to go to that area, even if it couldn't directly reach it. The problem I had with that is I couldn't get the NPC to move to this area right here if it couldn't reach this area. Now obviously now I solved that problem. As you can see here, the NPC will go as close as possible to the area even though it can't reach that area. Now my real beef with this is, in the Unity example code, this works exactly like that. What they have is, on a set destination example code, if you click an area, the NPC will attempt to reach that area even if they can't reach it, and it'll work just how it does in this example right here. And I'm going to show you that in a second. Let me just turn this NPC off. So let me turn the test NPC on. And that's the wrong script. There we go. This is Unity's example code right here as they have it set up on the website. When I click down, the NPC will go to that area using set destination. Now you can see with Unity's example code, if I click on an area that the NPC can't reach, it will still attempt its best to go there. Now I'm going to show you how most people use the code and the fact that it just doesn't work the same way. Let me move the NPC first over here. Let me give this a target. And now how this is set up is it just uses the player as a target and updates the position in every frame. And now you can see if I go to an area that it can't reach, the NPC doesn't attempt to reach this area. They'll just stand there. And I didn't understand why this behavior was like that, because all I did was I called set destination in the update method. And so I just told it the position it needed, the NPC, the position it needed to go to. This would seem to be the same as Unity does in its example code, but it's not. And the actual problem is, which I solved in this one, as you can see here, the actual problem is when you update set position every frame. If you update set position every frame, the NPC, if it can't reach the area, it will just pause and it won't go to that area at all. Now that's not the expected behavior I expected from the NavMesh agent, because in Unity's own example code, the NPC does try to reach the closest area it can if it can't reach this area. And what they did in the example code is they put on click down, and I think they did that for a very specific reason, so it can work that way. I find that a bit misleading though, because the NavMesh agent's regular behavior doesn't work that way. And this actually took me a couple of weeks to figure out, because it was not listed anywhere that if you update the set position every second, the NPC won't try to reach areas that it can't reach. All that's to say, I actually solved this with two easily fixable lines of code, which I'm going to show you now, and just show you how the intended behavior is supposed to work. Let me turn off the test NPC, and you can see my final NPC. Let me turn off the running. It has all of those problems solved. And this is the way I would expect the NPC to work, or the NavMesh agent system to work, as is more or less advertised, but it doesn't work this way. Now I'm just going to go into the C# and show you exactly how I solved all those issues. Okay, now I'm here in the C#, and for the first issue, all I needed was this line of code right here: agent velocity equals vector 3.0 if the stopping distance is if the agent is past the stopping distance, or the stopping distance is equal, which essentially means that if the agent gets too close to the player beyond a set stopping distance, it just straight sets the velocity to 0. That's the way you stop the NavMesh agent from crashing into the player. The second solution to the NPC trying to reach unknown areas, the behavior I wanted to, was this. And this actually makes the NavMesh agent run a little bit better because it's not updating set position every frame. And what I call this in the update method right here, in update set destination. And what I do is I save the player's position, the target's position, and then every frame I check that position, and if it's the same, if it hasn't changed, then it won't set a new destination. If it does change, then it sets the new destination. And what this does is it only sets the new destination if the player moves. This means you're not setting the update every frame, which allows the NPC to actually go try and make it to areas that it can't reach. So now if the NPC can't reach an area, it'll go as close as possible to the area because I'm not updating the position it needs to go to every frame. And with these two simple lines of code, I more or less solved those problems. Now this looks pretty simple, and you would think it was easy to come up with, but it wasn't simple because I didn't know the problem. And I didn't know the problem because those two problems weren't obvious when you first start using the NavMesh system. I think Unity should make it more obvious that the NavMesh system uses physics even outside of the rigid body, because if I had known that, I would have known to shut off the physics directly rather than trying to go through the rigid body and shut off the physics, because originally I had it set up like this. Get component rigid body dot velocity equals vector 3.0. Fun fact, Unity actually changed the system so they don't want you to do it this way anymore. And if you do it this way, it will give you an error every second, a yellow error, but it will give you an error. This used to work perfectly like this, but now they want you to set the velocity in a different way. They don't like you to set the velocity directly to the rigid body. But this is the way I try to do it at first, because all physics for normal objects run through the rigid body, but not with the NavMesh agent. The NavMesh agent actually has its own velocity, which I don't understand why it works that way. The velocity should only work with the rigid body component, because that's the entire point of the rigid body component, is to give an object physics. The second problem is, I think, isn't documented anywhere, and Unity should really fix that. They should make it obvious how the set destination function works, and put a warning in there if you read the documentation that the set destination won't try to reach unknown areas if it is set every second in update. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for watching.